I hope you're alive. Hello, everyone who is watching us. Welcome to our today's webinar, which is actually the first webinar since the new year. I didn't hold any other webinars. Yeah, there was COVID, there were holidays and everything. So I'm glad to announce that we are back with our webinars, with our interviews, and today there is Marc with us again from Xerius, and I'm super grateful for Marc to share the knowledge with us. It's because it's so important to learn about how to go independent, especially now during COVID times, where we look at new opportunities, new ways of earning money. Hello, everyone. I can see some people watching. Please say hello. Where you are joining us from? I mean, what city are you from? Connecting from the office, which is rare probably during this time, or from home, and how you're doing. Okay, I will give the word to Marc. Today we are going to talk about the topic about which a lot of people ask questions, especially when you are an expat in Belgium, you don't know local languages, you kind of don't know, how do I start my own company? How do I register? Which kind of registration I choose? What kind of registrations are actually existing? Because there are quite some in Belgium. That's why it's important to understand what is what and what are the benefits of starting, for example, as a self-employed, and how to start as a company, for example. So Marc is going to cover this topic today. Yeah, hi, I can see in the comments people saying hello, hi, guys, I'm so happy to be again back with you. So yeah, I will give a word to Marc. If you have questions, do ask them in the comments. I will keep my eyes on the comments so we wouldn't miss any questions. Marc, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Marc from Xerius. This is the third webinar we do. In the first two, we looked at how to start a company, what the costs are, which administrative things you have to do to start a company. And in this one, we're going to have a look at what the difference is between working alone, being a one-person business, let's say, or working with a company, because there's a lot of differences in costs, in the way it starts up, the cost of the startup. There's a lot of differences. There's advantages in both businesses. So look at those things, and we will start with the presentation. Yes, and the first thing we look at is, what do you do best, working as a self-employed person or working with a company? Now, the answer to that is not simple, because most business start as one person business, and after time they switch company, and there are several reasons for that we're going to look at today, but the main role, and something I need to press on, the main part in this whole story is your accountants. Very important when you make this make it not alone, but to make it with your accountant or your bookkeeper, because he knows best what is your financial situation, the financial situation of the business, costs, income, etc. That's very, very important. In the second slide is just the choice is always yours, of course, but it's what I said. Always talk about these things with your accountant. That's very, very important. And now we come to the what do you have to think about what do you have to think about in the next slide? I mean, yes, this one. There's a lot of differences, and you have to take into account the costs. I mean, not only the costs of the startup. What's the difference in cost between a one business and a company? We'll have a look at that just in a minute. But the costs, there's also costs that stay. For example, also the cost of the accountant and the bookkeeper can be higher in for the actual books in a company than one person business, and that's normal, of course, because there's more work to be done. Cost stays. So it's not only the cost of the data, notary costs and stuff like that. We'll have a look at that in a minute. But it's not only that cost of the startup, also certain costs. The liability is also often a thing where people look at when they plan to take a change from one person's business to a company. But the liability is also something we need to be careful with. There are some forms in Belgium that have a limited liability, which means that there is a difference or a wall, let's say, built between personal capital and assets and the company. So should you have, for example, a body at that moment, it's just the company that can be possessed, not your personal. And that's not so in a one-person business. There you are full liability for everything you do. So that's often also a reason to go from one system to another. And of course, decision is also very important. Decision making, because in a one-person business, it's easy. You're the boss. But in a company, it's not that simple. You have 4 people. That depends on what in your founding act or in your statutes and what they say about this. For example, it could be that there's 4 partners. You need 2 or 3 signatures. So then you have to be with 2 or 3 people and not alone. That's a big difference as well. So these things that make it easy and not easy for another. When we go to the next slide, here you can see the difference between, well, some differences at least, between the one person business or the company. Most cases, there's lower startup costs. Of course, we only talk about the startups. The cost is dependent on what you do, but the startups is lower. Practice without publication in the Belgian official Gazette or the Monitor is not required for a one-person business, so that's a lot less, but also a lot of work less. There's no minimum required, and a single bookkeeping is fine. So you don't need more than a simple bookkeeping. This also means that it's cheap when it's done by your accountant or your bookkeeper, because he will spend normally less hours on a bookkeeping for a one-person business than for a company. So that's also a big difference. All profits are for the entrepreneur. That's normal as a one-person business, so everything you make is yours. All decision making, I just told you about that. All decision making is yours to do because you're. But there is unlimited, which means that there is no difference between your personal money and your assets and those of your company, of your business. So if you have a bankruptcy, you might very well also have a personal bankruptcy. And when the debts are bigger than you have, you also have a personal bankruptcy. So that's to be considered as well. A very important thing is the income tax. All the money you make in a one-person business, after deduction of course costs, of course, but all the, let's say, the profit you make is automatically also your income, because profit is in a one-person business. You will pay personal income tax on that, and everybody knows that in Belgium the percentages of personal income tax are quite high, 25% to 50%. So that's a lot of income tax you have to pay. You always pay it on everything. Everything that is profit, you will pay that on. We have no shareholders, of course, but it's a one-person business. And it's a very short startup period. You can, let's say you decide to start with a one-person business. You can do this, let's say, tomorrow or the day after tomorrow. So it goes very fast. In a company, it's all different, of course, and you have startup costs, sometimes at least, because for you need a notary. Notary is expensive. Also, the work the notary does has to be published in the Belgian official gazette or the Moniteur Belge. Everything has to be published there. Also, work and costs. The minimum capital bid for a company, well, there's not always a minimum capital. So it goes from 0 to 61,000, for example, for an NE, naamloze vennootschap. You pay at least 61, you need at least 6,000. Sometimes that is especially for the company that have a notary act, so a notarial founding act. There is not only notary necessary, but mostly also a double entry keeping, of course, which means for your accountant or your bookkeeper, which means more expensive. In principle, profit is also shared among the partners. So it's not like in the other case of the one-person business that all the profit is for you. If you are with 3 partners, well, then the profit will have to share. Decision making, I told that before, is also the same. Mostly it's laid down in the articles of association, the statutes, when the notary makes the notarial founding act, indeed, then we can put in there how the decision-making power is, or how it works. For example, with 4 partners, 2 signatures or 3 signatures. So that's important as well. And that makes it sometimes a little bit difficult, more difficult, let's say, because to talk with the partners and agree with the partners over some decisions. Liability may be limited. That's a very interesting for the company. There, where I said for the one-person business, you are fully liable, so you can actually lose a lot. But with limited liability, which is the case in some of the company forms, we'll see that in a minute. When you have a company with limited liability, there is a certain difference between your personal assets and that of the company. If you have a bankruptcy, they can only touch the means of the company and not your private means. So that's a big difference. So not necessarily a bankruptcy means bankruptcy of the associates and the partners. It can be a bankruptcy of the company, but the associate partners, when there is a limited liability, have no personal damage about that, from that. Another thing is the corporate tax, which is lower than the income tax on a business. Of course, the partners take an income which they determine. You determine your income, and on that, of course, you also pay income tax. That's normal, but only on the money that stays in the company. There is tax which is a lot lower, which is about 25%, and not going up to 50% like on the personal income tax. So there's a big difference there as well. Several shareholders are, that's sometimes important because one person business, the word says that you can only do that yourself. So if you want to start a business with 2 or 3 or 4 people, it's not possible on the basis of a person business. You need some form of a company, but then you can do the business with several people. And the startup, of course, took a bit more time than in a one-person business. It can take a couple of weeks because I like to go to the notary. First of all, have a conversation with your accountant here, to the notary. Once he's ready, published in the Belgian official gazette. The company has to be has to go at the registers guichet in Belgium, and then you can start. So there's some other things to do than different things to do than in a one-person business. Okay, you can go to the next slide, please. Here you see some available type of companies. They're left. And you see there's about 5, maybe 6. But we come in Belgium from 7. So the law around companies and types of companies has changed recently, and we've gone from 17 types of companies. I think we were world champion with that. I think so, to a lot less. So now the still existed. They already existed, still exist, but in time they will all be formed to one of these types. When you start with a company now, you can choose one of these types. Now, as you can see, we started with BV, besloten vennootschap. That's the most used form or the type of company in Belgium. It is a notarial company, so you need a notarial founding act. You have to go to the notary, you have to pay notary as well. So this is actually a company where you have a limited liability. But even with a limited liability, you always have to be careful, because in the first 3 years, as you can see there, there's also capital, none, but sufficient initial capital. So there's not really an amount they put on that, but sufficient initial capital, which means you have a financial plan when you start with your company, and in the first year you go bankrupt, they are going to have your financial plan. And if it's totally not correct, or there's a lot of faults in it and everything, then you can still be for the bankruptcy. So that's to be considered as well. The first 3 years are not always with limited liability. It depends on the city. So that's for a BV. An NV, that's let's say the biggest form is money used for big companies. You see also there, of course, a notary act. So you have to go to the notary, but also a starting capital of at least 61,000 euro. So this one is not used for a very small business because you need to invest already a lot of money. This or coöperatieve vennootschap. For that, you need at least 3 founders, more directors. So that's also to be considered. It's also a notarial founded act. To the notary, there's no starting capital as well, but the same as BV, you need sufficient capital to start with that. And then the next type is the maatschap. But the maatschap is has different forms, like VOF, vennootschap on or commanditaire vennootschap, COMV, or even a maatschap with no legal just. You have a couple of types of that. So actually, it's 4 forms that remain: BV, NV, CV, maatschap, VOF, and maatschap KV. VOF, also vennootschap onder Finnen, you need at least 2 founders and 1 or more directors that you can choose. It is a private founding act you need, so you don't have to go to the notary. This is also a very often used type of company. You don't need to go to the notary for this, so it's a lot simpler. You also are free to determine your starting capital, so there's no minimum like in the NV, but you're also liable. There is a full liability here. With the maatschap COMV, there's also at least 2 founders, of which 1 managing partner and 1 associate you need to start that up. Also, private founding act, so you don't need to go to the notary, and the starting capital is also free to be determined. And that's actually all, except there's some other forms, like when you start a foreign company. There's some specialities, but these 5 actually, but 4 are the different types you can choose. Next slide, please. When you are starting to start up your business, what can the business counter do for you? Like xerius, for instance, what can we do for you when you want to start up a company? Well, in principle, it's simple. If you choose a type of company where there is no notarial founding act necessary, so when it's enough, when you have a private founding act or a private founding deed, then we can actually do everything. Then you deliver us the text of your founding act, and we put it in the right way, and we make it a publication in the Belgian Official Gazette, and all those things are done by us. So you actually don't have to do anything yourself. Of course, there's a cost for that. The other way you have to do it when you start is when you want to start with a notarial deed, so a company that needs a notarial founding act. Then first of all, like I said, you have to contact your accountant. Sometimes the accountant works with a certain notary. Otherwise, you have to contact the notary as well. He makes the founding act and does all those things, publication and stuff. And then you need to come back to the business counter to register your company in Belgium. for that you can still go to the business counter like xerius, like some others. There's others as well, and they register it. So it's actually simple when you start. If it's a company which you don't have to go to the notary for, then xerius can do, or another business counter can do everything. But otherwise, you have to go first to the notary. Of course, in both situations, it is advised to talk with your accountant first. That's, of course, very important. Yes, next, please. Now, to end, I would like to say something more about the social contributions, because we've seen now what the difference is between the two types and what types you can choose from, but it also has an effect on your social contributions. This is important because, like we told you in the previous sessions, you pay social contributions in Belgium 20.5% on your total year income. So it's a lot of money. And there is a difference also in how they calculate or on what you pay social contributions in a company or in a one-person business. Now, first of all, those social contributions, what was that again? Well, that is a percentage, 20.5% on your income you need to pay for your social rights, for your pension, for your child allowance, for your health insurance and stuff like that. You pay it to a social security fund like xerius or another. Once you choose a fund like that, you have to choose a fund like that when you start your business. Once that's chosen, it's also told to the taxes, and the taxes give you yearly income each year to the to xerius or to another. We calculate your social contributions. You pay the social contributions to us, and we give the money to the government. And the government makes sure you get your pension and your health insurance and everything. So that's the way it works. But it works differently in next slide, please. It works differently in a one-person business or in a company. In a one-person business, we start from the gross income, like always. All your business expenses are your costs, let's say, are deducted, and you keep the net taxable income. And on that next taxable income, you pay 20.5% social contributions and your income tax. That's the way it works. Now, this means also, and that's also what you saw in the previous slides, you pay on the total. When you have a one-person business, everything you make, all the profit is your income. So you also will pay on your full income for social security contributions and personal income tax. Next slide. When you have a company, it's different. Here you see that all the income you make comes into the company, and it comes in the company, and me as the manager or as the partner, I'm also independent. I can take a certain income out of the company, but it doesn't have to be everything. So, for example, if I start with a one-person business, and let's say my income goes to 60, 70,000, then I have to pay social contributions and income tax on everything. If I have those 70,000, for example, as income in the company, and I only take as wages, let's say 3,000, 3,500 each month out of the company, then I will only pay social contributions on that. So I won't pay on the total. I will pay only on the wages, social contributions, and my income tax. Of course, will have to pay taxes as well on the money that stays in the company. But that is the lower percentage, around 25%. So that's a big difference as well. Now, and often the question is asked, from what income do I go from a one-person business to a company to make this interesting? Well, that's why you have to talk to your accountant. Every situation is unique. The costs are different. The income is different. So the main thing to do when you think it's the moment to do a switch is talk to your accountant or your bookkeeper. Very, very, very important. Okay, I think this was was the most, some of the things I wanted to say. If there are any questions, you can also ask them.
Voila, I'm back. Marc, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much also for those who were listening to us. I can see there was Fanny, there was Milena. If you have any questions, please do post them now, so Marc could reply straight away. If not, we are going to finish. And if you have any questions, yeah, you can write to me and I will forward them to Marc. And then also remember that you can always contact Xerius for all those questions. And don't forget about your accountant, as Marc has mentioned. That's really important when you decide for what type of company to go, because yeah, it depends very much on how much you are going to earn. Okay, so I don't see any questions, so we will finish for today. If you want to learn something more about setting up a company in Belgium, just ask the question, and yeah, we will see if Marc can help us with that. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much, Marc. I'm really grateful.
No problem.
Really grateful. Thank you for your time. Yeah, and have a great day, everyone. À la prochaine.
Okay. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.